Hello everyone, in this video we're going to reach out to the OpenAI API to generate a recipe. You can see it in here. We have a title for the recipe and then we have the recipe in HTML format. This is what we're going to display in a page to the user, and then we're going to generate a image for the dish that that the model generated for us. So we can see the text here that we're going to generate, and then the image creation is going to give us a link, which is going to give us back the image that created for us in here. So now it put a whole chicken on top of rice because I didn't give it too much ingredients, so it didn't know what else to make. But we're gonna be able to play around with this and see more beautiful images and delicious recipes. So let's jump right into the video. Welcome back everyone. In this video we're finally going to generate our recipe and our dish image using the OpenAI API. We're going to use the GPT model for the recipe and DALL for the image generation. So in the last video we completed our landing page and we also work on our create page. So make sure your server is back up and running. If you want to just start from this video, you can go to the GitHub repo. You can actually just look at the part 1 repo branch, so you can just clone that one from there. So there you will find the code button, and you can clone it, npm I, and run the server locally, so you can continue from here if you want. But we're continuing from the last video. I'm going to hide the terminal. So like I said in the last video, we created the landing page. We also work on the create page, which right now we have this is the create page. We have a form that is going to take in a list of ingredients separated by commas. And then when we hit submit, it's going to call the handle submit here. And the handle submit right now is just console logging the ingredients. So if I go here, type like rice, chicken, just for testing, and open up my console here, clear this up and hit submit, we can see we have an array of ingredients, right? So let's continue from this handle submit here. So we're ready to, instead of console login, we want to call our generate recipe action, which we need to create now. So we're gonna go into the main folder here, in the root folder. We're gonna create a new folder, actions. This is basically going to be our server actions. So we're gonna create a new file. So for the generate recipe, I want to have a separate file. So let's just do generate a recipe .ts, and in here we need to mark this as a server action, so use server here, so this can run on the server. And then here we're going to, let's create the function, so export default generate recipe, and here we're going to take in a array of ingredients. So ingredients is going to be an array of strings, and I forgot the keyword function here. All right, so we're going to receive the array that we just console login, and we're going to do something with that in here. Let's have a try catch in here. Let's console log the error, and if we want, we can console log ingredients, just so we can verify that everything is working fine. Cool. So this recipe, generate recipe, is what we need to call from the create page. So the create when we submit the form. So back in here, we're going to import and generate a recipe in here. And we are going to, instead of just console login, we can leave the console log there if we want, and then call generate a recipe, passing the ingredients array that we have in here. Right now, export default function action must have an async function, so we need to make sure this is a async function here. Back in the generate recipe. Cool. So in here, we need to use these ingredients to create a prompt that we're going to send to the OpenAI API, to the chat completion one. So we are going to, let's open up the terminal. Let's tap our running server. Oops. And we need to install OpenAI. So let's do the OpenAI client. So let's do npm i OpenAI and hit enter there. While this gets installed, we're going to go, you need to log in into your OpenAI account, and you need to make sure that you have some credits available and that you have your billing set up if you run out of tokens, because there's a few errors that you might get if you don't have your billing set up or you don't have any tokens left. So once you log in and you verify your billing is fine, you can go to your profile. So you can click on your picture, click on profile, and click on user API keys. And we're going to generate a new key for this project. So it's recommended that you create an API key for each one of your projects. And I'm going to create a new secret key here. And I'm showing you mine because I'm going to delete it after the video, but you should never share your key with anyone. So the name for the project is recipe underscore generator. So that way we know which application is using this API key. So we own this unless you have a different account from a company or something like that. Permissions all, and create the secret key here. So I'm going to copy this here, and we're going to go into the main root folder here. We're going to create a new file. Let's call it .env.local, and we're going to create an environment variable inside of this file. So let's create all caps OpenAI underscore API underscore key. Set that equals to the API key that we copy here. Cool. Now we can click done and forget about this one in here. So again, make sure your billing is set up so that way you don't get any errors from the OpenAI API. So let's save the file. Let's close the .env.local and let's run our server back up. We already have this completed. npm already installed the OpenAI client. So let's run the server one more time. And we're going to go back to the generate recipe file where we're going to use the OpenAI client. So let's import OpenAI in here. And then we're going to configure the OpenAI client. So we're going to say const OpenAI equals a new OpenAI client instance, and we're going to pass in a object. We're going to set the API key. There we go. And then we're going to set this to process.env. And then the name we gave the environment variable was OpenAI underscore API underscore key, and save it. Make sure and double check the name of the environment variable here with the environment variable we created here. If you want, you can just copy that. Make sure it's OpenAI underscore key, and make sure it's the same thing here. That's another error that we normally run into sometimes. Cool. So we have the OpenAI client set up. So now we can go inside of the function. Let me hide the terminal here. Whoops, that's not what I want. There we go. And inside of the try, we are going to, let's work on generating the recipe. So let's say generate recipe. And in here, we're going to create our prompt. So we're going to use a little bit of prompt engineering here in order to get the results we want. So let's create a variable. Let's call it a recipe prompt. Set that equals to we're going to use a multi-line here. So let's use a backtick here. And in here, we're going to say create a detail recipe based on only the following ingredients. And then we can make this a little smaller for now. So colon, enter here. So in here, we're going to, actually, let's just keep it in there. Because now, remember, we have the ingredients coming in here is in an array. So we can just concatenate that string with the plus ingredients dot, we can use the join method from the array, which is going to add all the elements of an array into a string. So we can use this one, and we're going to join them by a comma. Just a comma in there, no spaces. And then we are going to keep concatenating something after the ingredients. So here we're going to add all the ingredients that the user is sending here in the form. And then we're going to, let's do concatenation. Let's go to the next line. Backticks again. And inside of the backticks, let's do a new line. So backslash new. And then we're going to go to the next line and say, give the recipe a title. And then we're going to say format the recipe in a HTML body with semantic elements. Period. And then we're going to say, give me back the results on, let's say, in a JSON format, or let's just say, give me back the result as in JSON. Let's say in JSON as follow. This should work. So now we're going to provide the actual format that we want back. So we're telling the purpose, some more instructions in here, and then we're actually telling the model how we want the results formatted. So here we're going to give it curly brackets. This is our JSON object, and we want a property called title, which is going to have the recipe title, comma, and we want the recipe in here, and we want the recipe formatted in HTML. Cool. So we're gonna have the title in a property called title and the recipe in HTML, just like we're asking here. We want it in a property called recipe. So when I was working with the prompt in the prompt here, the model was adding more text describing what he did and things like that. So after the closing curly brackets here, we can say don't add any other markup. And I think markup worked perfectly, because sometimes it was adding like extra, because we're telling it just give me the body, but it was generating like the whole entire page with meta tags and all of that. So depending on what do you need, the format that you need to tell the model exactly what you want. So let me try to format this here, and this is going to be our prompt here. So now that we have the prompt, we are going to, let's console log the prompt so we can also see it. Prompt, recipe prompt. And let's do a quick test here really quick. Let's open the terminal. Let's do here rice, chicken, or any other ingredients that you want. Hit submit. And my app is compiling because I stopped the server to install npm OpenAI. So here we got the prompt. So here you can see create a detailed recipe based on only the following ingredients: rice, chicken. Give the recipe a title, format the recipe here in HTML, don't add any other markup. So this is fine. This is exactly what we want. We got 2 new lines. So in here, we actually then don't need this because we are using backtick. So this is going to be a literal empty line. And this is empty too here. That's fine. We can keep that one like that. So let's do it again. Cool. We can keep that one there. Now it disappear. I'm going to keep it. Or maybe just like that. Yeah, that's fine, because this is a backtick, so this is going to be a literal empty line there. Cool. All right, so now I think this will get exactly what we want. So let's hide the terminal. And now we are ready to send this prompt to the OpenAI API. So we're going to get we're going to make the OpenAI API call here. So let's create a variable called recipe completion, because we're gonna have the recipe completion and the image completion also. And let's set that to await OpenAI that chat that completion. So this is the completions in the completion API that create, and then here parentheses, and we're going to pass an object in here. Here we need to set the messages, and the messages is going to be an array. Inside of the array, we need to pass a object here for one message, and we need to set the row property here to user, and then the content is going to be set to the recipe prompt. So we send in a message to our OpenAI completion, and we're saying, hey, we're the user, and here's my prompt. This is what I want you to give me back. So after the array here, let me see what this is complaining about. row user content string is not assignable to parameter of check completion. Okay, we will get there. We need to set the model. So model is we're gonna use the new GPT dash 4.0 mini, which is the new one. Is faster and it's cheaper, so we save some money too. And in here you can play around with the temperature of the prompt. So if you don't want something too crazy, you can set the temperature to around 0.7, and you can play around with that, give it a few tries to see what recipes it can come up with. You can actually be really flexible with this too, like allow the user to set the temperature themselves, like, hey, give me something, like if they want something, I don't know, like easy to make or something, or like something really fancy, that you can play around with the temperature and allow the user to kind of like pick what do they want. They want something basic, or they want something weird that the model can come up with. So let's keep it at 0.7. That gave me back a few good recipes. We can we want to make sure we get JSON back, so you can also set here the response format, and here we can set it to a object, and we can set the type to JSON object. And always, even if you set the format here on your prompt, always tell the model what format do you want, and give it an example too, because this is, even though we have this option here, is not guaranteed that it's going to give you back JSON format. So the last thing you can do here is play around with the max token. So max token is basically how big of a recipe you can generate, right? So you can set it to maybe 512, but when I was testing it out, even with 512, there was one recipe that it didn't finish creating the recipe because it ran out of tokens. So I'm going to not put any max token in here, but if you want to set a max token there of, I don't know, 700 or something like that, you can do that too. So that way it doesn't spend too much money. But this is pretty cheap, so I'm just going to not add it in there. All right, so in here, when we get back to completion, we're going to console log it here. So let's do console log. Let's console log recipe completion, and we can get the actual content from recipe completions that choices square bracket 0, that message, and then that content. That's where the actual content is going to be inside of this object we get back. So let's just give it a try. And I'm going to hit submit here again. So hit submit, we get the prompt, and we're gonna wait a little bit, and then we get back a response here. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. And in here, give me back the following. So in here we got title, simple chicken and rice. And this is the title of the recipe. We got the recipe inside of an article element with the header, with an H1 inside of the header. There is a section, there's an LI. You can see that there's only HTML inside of this recipe in here, right? So we got inside of the recipe, in here, inside of the recipe here. It's confusing because my terminal cut it off there a little bit. But if you did get an error here, it could be that your billing is not set up, you maybe run out of tokens, so take a look into there. And if you still get an error, check that you have the same configuration I have here. You might have a different model. If you're using a different model that is deprecated or something like that, just make sure you got the same thing and double check your billing. I'm gonna send the same ingredients again to see what we get again. And let's wait a couple of seconds. We can see the JSON object here, the title, and in recipe we have the article element ready to be displayed on the page. Right, so here we got the same simple chicken and rice dish. Did we get the same one? Recipe simple chicken and rice. Yeah, we got the same one. You can play around with the temperature here to see what results you want. Remember the temperature, if you go here, it goes from 0 to 2. The higher values is 0.8. Will make the output more random. And the values that are lower, it will be more focused and deterministic. So right now it is at 0.7, so it should be giving us back some good random recipes there. All right, so let's continue with the next step. So we got the recipe here ready to be displayed. So before we do that, we are going to use the title that we got back, and we're going to use that to generate the image of the dish. So what we're gonna do here, let's go, and since we're getting JSON data, because that's what we said that we wanted back, right? We're getting JSON data. You can see the double quotes here, double quotes here, and double quotes everywhere. So what we're gonna do in here, we're going to create a variable, let's say const data or recipe data equals, let's parse the JSON data, right? The content that we got back. So we can use JSON that parse, and we can pass in the content. So in here, let's copy this whole entire thing here, and let's pass it to JSON.parse. And here it says argument string no is not assignable to parameter of string. So here we can tell, let's see, in here, let's do a variable here. Right now, TypeScript is saying that we cannot pass this value to JSON because it's not a string. So let's create a variable here. Let's say const content and we're going to store the recipe.choices.message.content, right? So we're getting the content and we're going to store it there, and we're going to cast it, so let's say as a string, and then we're going to pass the content variable to the JSON.parse instead. All right, so now that is a string. We got the content that we got back, and we're giving it to JSON.parse to make it. Remember, JSON.parse takes in a JSON object into a JavaScript object. So now here we could access this JavaScript object and access the title and access the recipe as well. So with this data at hand, we're going to here generate the dish image. So in here, we are going to, let's say, we're going to use the recipe title that was generated in order to create an image based on the title. And we're going to add a little bit of prompt engineering to that too. So let's say let's just grab the image title, the recipe title. Let's say const recipe title equals to recipe data question mark that title in here. Right, so we got the recipe title, title. There we go. And let's just check that we have a title, because we need that title in order to generate the image. So we're going to check if there's no recipe title, we can throw a new error. So let's do throw a new error, and we can say a recipe title is require for image generation. All right, so cool. So now here we should have if we reach all the way here, we pass that check, we should have a recipe that title. So here we can safely create a image prompt. So let's do const image prompt equals, and we're gonna do a backticks here. And let's see what we're gonna do here. So we're gonna use the title. And the thing with the image generation, there is a whole bunch of articles about it, and you can search up different prompt techniques in order to generate different type of images. So the one that I decided to go with, you can change it if you want, is going to be a professional food photography, and I think that gave me good quality image for the page. So let's pass in the title here. So we're going to pass recipe title, and then we're going to put a comma, and let's say professional food photography in here. All right, so let's say what was the simple chicken and rice dish, right? So that's gonna be simple chicken and rice dish. Professional food photography is going to generate an image with that prompt. So all the images that you provide to DALL and most of these image generation models, they get enhanced, and they get an extra prompt on top of your prompt in order to generate it. So you don't have to be really you don't need a too complicated type of prompt here. This will actually generate pretty nice images, in my opinion. So now that we got the image prompt, let's go and make the API. So the API call, so OpenAI DALL API call, and here we're gonna do, let's go and say, let's just call it const image completion. We have our recipe completion and now our image completion, and we're gonna set that equals to await OpenAI dot images. What happened there? That images that generate, and here we need to pass in, we need parentheses, pass in an object, and in here we're going to set the different options we have. So we're going to set the model to, let's do quotes. You have DALL E2 and 3. I'm going to use 3. You can use the 2. This is the previous one, but actually the 2 allows you to create more than one image. I think DALL 3 as of now can only generate one at a time. So I'm good with 1, and also is cheaper as well. So I'm gonna, there's different options, 2 or 3, but 3 should give us back one image, and it should be enough for our application. Let's go and pass in the prompt in here, and we're gonna pass in the image prompt in here. Then we need to set the size of the image, and if you do quotes here, it will give you the different sizes that you have. I'm gonna ask for 1024 by 1024, and then the quality, we can set that to HD or standard. Standard is good for me. Tried out the HD to see, but if you're creating another app that needs HD images, you know, that might be an option you want to change. And also we're using DALL 3, but if you're using the 2, you can set the N value here, and then you can pass in how many images you want. So we can set N to not the number of images. The number of images to generate must be 1 and between 1 and 10. DALL 3 only, it's 1 image is supported. So I'm just gonna keep this here to remind you the property here, but for DALL 3, this is the default and the only one you can use. So that's it. This is the API call, and then we are going to let's console log the image completion to see what we get, and let's give it a try. So in here, I'm writing everything all together here, but you can break this down into like a function that will generate the prompt, smaller function, and then you just have to call that in here instead of doing that here. But I want to have everything in here so for you to see it. Separate functions will be harder for you to follow along here, but you can organize it into smaller functions that will create and organize your prompts a little bit better. So let's give it a try. Let's go and run this again. Open the terminal here, scroll all the way to the bottom, and let's hit submit. Now this is going to take a little bit longer because first it needs to generate the recipe. So we're getting pretty much the same recipe back, but we're only giving them the same ingredients, so there's not much probably you can do. But you can play with the temperatures to see if you get different values. So now we finally got the image completion results. So here we get, look what we get. We get this object here. We get the created time. We get the data in here, an array. And here you can see the revised prompt. So the revised prompt is what I was saying, that the OpenAI will help you to generate the image. So this is the revised prompt. So it takes in your prompt and make it better. So you don't really need to give too much information unless you really want something very specific. So look at the revised prompt. So this is the prompt that it was given to the model to generate this image. And now you get a URL where you can see the image. So now if we click on this and click on follow link and open it, we can see a whole chicken and some rice. And we get this link. This link is actually hosted for 2 hours. So your image is going to be available here for 2 hours. After 2 hours, you're not going to find this image anymore. So that's why we need to store this image into a file storage. We're going to use Cloudinary instead of S3 or any other. You can use any file storage, but Cloudinary is super easy to set up, so you just want to have something that is easy to follow along. So right now we were able to generate the recipe, and we were able to generate the image. So in our next video, the next step will be to store the image file. So we're going to pretty much download and save it into the file storage. And then we are going to also store our recipe in MongoDB. And we're also going to store the recipe link that Cloudinary is going to give us, give us back. So we're going to store that into our database as well. So that's everything for this video. In the next video, we'll work on storing everything and navigating the user so they can actually see the recipe and the image that was created. So that's everything for this one. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next video.